The eviction order was still warm from the printer when my lawyer placed it in my son-in-law's hand. I watched his face change. That's the moment I want you to hold on to, because everything that follows started with him thinking he could throw an old man out of his own house, in his own state, built with his own two hands. He was wrong about a lot of things that year. That was just the first. My name is Walter Kessler. I'm 68 years old. I've lived in Prescott, Arizona my whole adult life, and until 11 months ago I believed my daughter would never let anyone hurt me. I was wrong about that too. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it started, because you need to understand what I lost before you understand what I did. If that opening got your heart rate up even a little, good. Stay with me, because what happens over these next 3 parts is going to test everything you think you know about family and about how far a quiet man can be pushed. Hit subscribe and drop a like before we go back. You won't want to miss where this goes. The house sits at the edge of Prescott, up where the pines start thinning into high desert, with a view of Thumb Butte that Eleanor used to watch from the kitchen window every morning with her coffee. I built that kitchen myself in 1987. Poured the foundation with my own 2 hands, framed every wall, ran the electrical wrong the first time and had to redo it, and Eleanor never once let me forget it. She died 2 years ago. Pancreatic cancer, 4 months from diagnosis to funeral. Fast, they told us. Like that was supposed to be a mercy. I don't know that it was. I know the house got quiet in a way I wasn't prepared for. 41 years of her laughing in that kitchen, and then nothing but the hum of the refrigerator and my own footsteps on the wood floor I'd sanded myself. My daughter Renee noticed the quiet before I'd admit it out loud. "Dad, you shouldn't be alone out here," she told me, maybe 8 months after the funeral. We were sitting on the porch, and I remember the light was doing that thing it does in late September in Arizona, gold and low, cutting sideways through the junipers. "Let us move in, help you out, just until you're steadier. I want to be honest with you about something. I wasn't steady. I was a man rattling around a house built for 2, eating cereal for dinner because cooking for one felt obscene after 4 decades of cooking for her. So when Renee offered, some part of me that I'm not proud of just wanted the noise back, wanted footsteps that weren't only mine. Her husband Bill came with the deal, of course, and my grandson Cole, who was 9 at the time, sweet-faced, gap-toothed, the kind of kid who still hugged you like you meant it. I should have asked more questions. I should have asked why a 34-year-old man with a real estate license and a growing portfolio, as he liked to call it, needed to move into his father-in-law's paid-off house instead of buying his own. I didn't ask. I signed some paperwork Derek walked me through at the kitchen table. Said it was for a family trust, tax purposes. Nothing that changed anything about who owned what, just protecting the asset for Cole's future. He used words like that. Asset. Like the house wasn't the place his wife took her first steps. Wasn't where Eleanor and I danced in the kitchen to the radio on our 30th anniversary. Just an asset. I trusted him because Renee trusted him, and I trusted Renee because she was my daughter. And you don't stop trusting your daughter just because her husband makes your skin itch a little when he talks too fast about money. I should have called Eleanor's lawyer that same week. I didn't. That's on me. For the first year, it was almost good. Almost. Cole would knock on my workshop door in the garage and want to help me sand things, even when there was nothing that needed sanding. I taught him to identify birds off the back deck, cactus wrens, curve-billed thrashers, the red-tailed hawks that circled over the butte in the afternoons. For a little while, the house had noise in it again, and some of that noise was good noise. But somewhere in that second year, something in Cole started to shift, and it wasn't the kind of shift you brag about at Thanksgiving. It started small. A broken lamp in the living room, and when I asked about it, Cole said the dog knocked it over. We didn't have a dog. Then it was a missing 20 from my wallet, and Cole told his mother he'd seen our housekeeper Marisol near my room that morning. Marisol had worked for this family for 6 years. She'd helped nurse Eleanor in her last months. She cried in my kitchen when Renee confronted her, and I had to stand there and watch a good woman get accused because a 9-year-old boy had learned that a confident lie travels faster than a quiet truth. I found the 20 in my other jacket 2 days later. I never got an apology on Marisol's behalf. Nobody seemed to think one was owed. Something is wrong in this house, and it isn't Marisol. The music box was what broke something open in me. Eleanor's music box, her mother's before her, from Vienna. This delicate porcelain thing that played a Strauss waltz when you lifted the lid, chipped in one corner from the move out here in 1979, and precious to me in a way I don't think I can fully explain to you. I kept it on the mantel. It was one of maybe 3 things in that house I would have run back into a fire for. It turned up broken on a Tuesday afternoon in early March. The hinge snapped clean, porcelain cracked along the base. Cole told his mother the cat did it. We didn't have a cat either, hadn't had one in 3 years since our old Tabby passed. When I asked Cole directly, gently, kneeling down to his eye level the way I used to when he was smaller, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Grandpa, I didn't touch it," in a voice so smooth and so practiced that something cold moved through my chest. That's not a child's fumbling lie. That's a rehearsed one. Someone taught him how to hold a straight face while he does it. That night I finally said something to Renee. Not about the music box specifically, about the pattern, about the lying, the blame shifting, the way Cole had started treating dishonesty like a tool instead of a mistake. I chose my words carefully. I told her I loved her, and I loved that boy more than my own life, and that's exactly why I couldn't watch this happen without saying something. She didn't hear a word of the love. She heard criticism, and criticism from me, lately, seemed to detonate something in her that had been sitting there, primed, for longer than I understood. "You're useless," she said. Not raised at first, flat, cold, like she'd rehearsed it too. Then louder. "You don't get to lecture me about my son. Mind your own business, Dad." I stood there in my own kitchen, the one I built, the one Eleanor's ashes were, in part, scattered near, out under the juniper past the porch. And I felt something in my chest cave in quietly, the way old wood gives before it cracks. Derek came down the hallway fast, drawn by the volume, and he didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask for context. He planted himself between me and his wife, like I was a threat that needed containing, and he pointed one finger at my face in my own living room and said the words that changed everything. "Apologize to my wife, or get out of this house. Now. Get out. Of my house. The one I poured concrete for. The one I still have splinters in my hands from, 37 years later, if I press hard enough into the old scars." I didn't say anything back to him. I want you to understand that. I didn't yell, I didn't defend myself, I didn't even look at Renee, though I could feel her watching me, waiting maybe for me to fold the way I always had. I turned around. I walked to my study, and I sat down at Eleanor's old desk, the one with her handwriting still faintly visible in pencil on the blotter, and I opened the drawer where I'd shoved that crust paperwork 2 years earlier without ever reading it properly. I started reading it, really reading it, for the first time. And about 4 pages in, my hands went cold because I found a clause with Derek's name on it that I did not remember agreeing to, granting him authority I never intended to give away. I picked up my phone. I didn't call Renee. I didn't call Derek. I called a number I hadn't dialed in over a year, a name Eleanor's old attorney had given me once, almost as a joke, almost as a warning. "If you ever need someone who isn't afraid of your son-in-law's charm, call her." The line rang twice. "Kessler," the voice on the other end said. "It's been a while. What's wrong?" I looked down at the paperwork in my shaking hands, at 4 pages of my own signature on things I never should have signed, and I said the only thing that felt true. "Everything," I told her. "Everything is wrong, and I think I need your help to make it right." Grief, I'd learned after Eleanor died, doesn't announce itself. It just sits on your chest at 3 in the morning and waits for you to notice it's there. What I felt after that night in March was different. Heavier in some ways, lighter in others. Grief for a wife is clean. There's no betrayal in it, no one to be angry at except maybe God, and I'd made my peace with him a long time ago. This was something else. This was grief with teeth. I didn't sleep that first week. I'd lie in the bed I used to share with Eleanor, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow circles, and I'd hear Derek's voice in my head over and over. Apologize to my wife, or get out. Out of the house I built. Out of the life I'd spent 41 years constructing board by board, memory by memory. He said it like he owned the deed, like he owned me. I want to tell you I handled those first days with dignity. I didn't. I sat in Eleanor's sewing room, the one room in that house Renee and Derek never touched, still full of her fabric scraps and her old Singer machine gathering dust, and I let myself fall apart in a way I hadn't allowed since the funeral. I talked to her picture like a crazy old man. I asked her what I was supposed to do. She didn't answer, of course, but something about saying it out loud to her face steadied my hands enough to start thinking straight again. By the second week, the grief had curdled into something with a purpose. Attorney Denise Whitfield's office was above a coffee shop on Gurley Street, one of those old brick buildings downtown with creaky stairs and a window unit that rattled louder than it cooled. She was maybe 50, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who didn't waste a single word she didn't mean. "Walk me through the trust document again," she said, spreading the pages across her desk like a poker hand. Slowly, this time. I told her everything. The tax purposes explanation Derek gave me at my own kitchen table. The signature I put down without a lawyer present, without Denise present, without anyone but a son-in-law with a fast mouth and faster hands guiding my pen. She went quiet for a long moment, running her finger down page 4, the page that had turned my hands cold. "Walter," she said finally, "this clause doesn't just name Derek as co-trustee. It gives him unilateral authority over the property in specific circumstances, including if you're deemed, and I'm quoting the language here, incapacitated or otherwise unable to manage affairs." She looked up at me. "Who decides if you're incapacitated?" I already know the answer before she says it. "He does," she said. "Or a doctor he selects." The room went very still. Outside I could hear the espresso machine hissing downstairs, some ordinary Tuesday morning happening 2 floors below, the moment my whole understanding of my son-in-law rearranged itself. "This isn't a mistake," Denise said. "Mistakes don't read this clean. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing wrote this language, and they wrote it to work slowly, quietly, so you'd never notice until it was too late to fight it. 2 years. He's been sitting on this for 2 years, waiting. Can we undo it?" And I asked. "We can," she said. "But Walter, I need you to understand something before we start. If we move on this the way it needs to be moved on, it's going to look, to your daughter, like war. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Cole's face when he lied to me about the music box, smooth and rehearsed. I thought about Renee's voice. "You're useless, mind your own business," a voice I didn't recognize coming out of the daughter who used to fall asleep on my chest during Diamondbacks games on the porch. "He taught her that voice," I said quietly. "I don't think that's who she is. I think that's who she's become, living under him." Denise nodded slowly. "Then let's find out. Quietly for now. Loud, later, if we have to be." Here's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal. The discovering of it doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like a door opening onto a room you didn't know existed in your own house. Over the following weeks, I did something I hadn't done in 2 years. I paid attention. Not the way I used to, trusting, half-present, grateful for the noise in the house. I paid attention the way I used to on a job site. Back when a crew member's shaky hands or a subcontractor's too-quick estimate told you everything you needed to know before the numbers did. I noticed Derek's phone calls got longer and more hushed after 9 at night, taken out on the back patio where he thought the desert wind covered his voice. I noticed the growing real estate portfolio he liked to mention at dinner never seemed to produce anything. No closings, no commission checks, nothing but stress lines that had started carving themselves into his forehead sometime in the last year. I noticed Renee had started flinching, just slightly, whenever his name came up in a certain tone. She's not happy. She's scared, and she's covering the scared with anger, and I've been too busy being hurt to see it. That realization did something to me I wasn't expecting. It softened something even as it hardened something else. Because the man in me that loved my daughter wanted to run to her, wanted to say, "I see you, I see what's happening to you, let me help." But the man in me that had just read 4 pages proving Derek had spent 2 years quietly building a legal trap around my own home knew that running to her too soon would only hand Derek the warning he needed to cover his tracks. So, I did the harder thing. I waited. I became, on the surface, exactly what Derek wanted, an old man chastened into silence. I apologized to Renee, vaguely, generally, the kind of apology that costs nothing and commits to nothing. I overreacted, I told her one evening in the kitchen. I know you're doing your best with Cole. I watched something in her shoulders relax, watched Derek's posture loosen across the table, watched them both settle back into believing they'd won. Let them believe it. Believing it is what makes them careless. While they relaxed, I built. I called an old friend, Russ Applegate, who'd worked county records for 30 years before retiring, and asked him, quietly, off the books, over coffee at a diner on the east side of town, to help me pull the original 1987 deed language, the version that existed before Derek ever touched a piece of paperwork in my house. It matched nothing in the trust Derek had drafted. Not even close. I started keeping a notebook, not dramatic, not a thriller movie ledger, just a contractor's habit, the same kind of daily log I used to keep on job sites for 35 years. Dates, incidents, the music box, the $20 and Marisol's tears. A night in April when I overheard Derek on the patio saying the words, "Just need 6 more months before the refinance closes," to someone I couldn't identify. Refinance. Refinance of what? This house isn't his to refinance. That was the piece that finally made my stomach drop through the floor. I brought it straight to Denise the next morning. "He's not just trying to control the house," she said, after a long silence, pulling up county lending records on her computer. "Walter, there's already a lien filed against this property 11 weeks ago. I need you to sit with me in this moment, because it's the one that changed everything for me. Finding out someone you love. Let a man put a lien against the house your wife spent her whole life in. That's not just betrayal, that's theft with a family's blessing behind it. Drop a comment and tell me, if you found out someone had done this to your home, would you have gone straight to your daughter, or would you have done what Walter did and waited for the right moment to strike? And tell me where you're watching from. I want to know who's sitting with me in this story tonight." Denise turned her monitor toward me. There it was, in black and white, county recorded and undeniable. A home equity lien, 6 figures, filed against a house that had been paid off, free and clear, since 2003. Using signature authority Derek had quietly granted himself through that trust clause. He's been draining my house like a bank account. And Renee doesn't know. I'd bet everything I have left that Renee doesn't know. He needed cash, Denise said. Badly and fast, based on these figures. My guess is the real estate portfolio isn't growing, Walter, it's collapsing. And he used your house, your dead wife's house, to keep himself afloat while he lied to your daughter's face about it. I sat in that creaky office chair above the coffee shop, June heat pressing against the window unit, and I felt something inside me go very cold and very clear, the way a job site goes quiet right before a controlled demolition. "What do we do?" I asked, "to get it back, all of it? The house, the trust, my daughter, before he takes her down with him?" Denise closed the laptop slowly and looked at me with something that might have been respect. "We stopped being quiet," she said. "We filed to void the trust amendment for fraud. We petitioned to restore your sole ownership, and we do it fast enough that he doesn't get a chance to drain another dollar out from under your daughter's feet." She paused. "But Walter, once we file this, there's no version of this where it stays hidden. Derek is going to find out someone's coming for him. The question is whether we let him see us coming, or whether the eviction order lands on his desk before he ever sees our shadow." I thought about Cole learning to lie with a straight face. I thought about Marisol crying in my kitchen for something she never did. I thought about Renee's voice cracking under a script her husband had written for her. "Don't let him see it coming," I said. "Not until it's already too late for him to run." Summer in Prescott burns different than summer anywhere else in Arizona. Up at 5,300 feet, the heat doesn't sit on you like it does down in the valley. It comes in short, sharp waves, thunderheads building over the Bradshaws by early afternoon, monsoon rain hammering the roof I'd shingled myself 20 years back. That July, I watched a lot of those storms roll in from my study window, waiting. Denise filed the petition on a Thursday. Fraud in the trust amendment. Restoration of sole ownership. A motion to void the lien Derek had bled against my house like a tick against skin. She warned me it could take weeks to move through the court, and it did. 6 of them, the longest 6 weeks of my life since the ones I spent in a hospital waiting room watching Eleanor fade. I kept apologizing to Renee during those weeks. Small ones. Quiet ones. I helped Cole with a birdhouse project for school, sanded the wood myself, let him hammer the nails in crooked because a kid should get to be proud of his own crooked nails. Derek relaxed so completely into thinking he'd won that he started talking about expanding, a rental property he wanted to flip, more leverage against a house he no longer legally had the right to leverage. Let him talk. Every word out of his mouth right now is a nail in his own coffin, and he doesn't even know it. The court ruling came through on a Tuesday morning in late August. The air still thick from a storm the night before, steam rising off the driveway where the desert dirt had drunk down the rain. Denise called me at 7:15. "It's done," she said. "Full restoration of sole ownership, effective immediately. The lien's been voided. Derek's exposed to the lender for the full amount personally, since the collateral claim never should have existed. And Walter, the judge granted something else. You want to hear it, or you want to see it in person?" "I want to see his face when he hears it." "Send it over," I said. "I want it in my hand before I say a word to anyone in this house." Derek cornered me that same evening. I don't think it was coincidence. I think some animal part of him had sensed the ground shifting under his feet for weeks and finally decided to force the issue before it swallowed him whole. We were in the kitchen. My kitchen. The one with the crooked outlet I never fixed, because Eleanor liked the story of it too much to let me correct it. Renee was at the table, Cole upstairs, and Derek came in from the garage with that particular tightness in his jaw I'd learned meant he was about to perform confidence he didn't have. "We need to talk about the living arrangement," he said, like he was opening a business meeting. "Long term, I think it makes sense, for everyone, if we formalize things. Get you set up in the casita out back maybe, keep things simple." The casita, the 800-square-foot guest house I built for visiting family. He wants to move me out of my own home and into my own shed. "Formalize how?" I asked, keeping my voice level, the same level voice I'd practiced for 6 weeks. "Just paperwork," Derek said, waving a hand like it was nothing. "Residency agreement. Keeps things clean for everybody going forward." He still thinks he's the one holding the paperwork that matters. "Derek," I said, "apologize to my daughter, or you can leave first." His face did something I'd been waiting 2 years to see, a flicker, small and fast, of a man realizing the ground he was standing on wasn't the ground he thought it was. "Excuse me?" he said. "You heard me." I reached into the drawer by the stove, the same drawer where, 5 months earlier, I'd found 4 pages that broke something open in my chest, and pulled out the folder Denise had messengered to the house that afternoon. "You stood in this kitchen in March and told me to apologize or get out of a house I built with my own hands. So I'm going to give you the same courtesy. Apologize to Renee for what you've done to her, or get out." Renee stood up slowly from the table. "Dad, what is—" The doorbell rang. I'd asked Denise to time it exactly this way, and God bless her, she was punctual to the minute. I walked to the door myself and let her in, folder under her arm, calm as a Sunday. Derek's face went the color of drywall the second he saw her. "Renee," I said, "this is Denise Whitfield. She's been my attorney for the last 6 weeks. This is the part I want you sitting forward for, because everything that happens in the next few minutes is the moment the whole story turns inside out. Comment below and tell me, when Derek hears what's in that folder, do you think Renee stands beside her father, or does she still defend the man who did this to her? I want to know what you think before you keep reading." Denise laid it out plainly, the way a good contractor lays out a foundation. Clean lines, no wasted words. The trust clause Derek had buried inside legitimate-looking paperwork 2 years ago. The lien, filed 11 weeks before that night in March, drained against a house that had been mortgage-free for over 20 years. The refinance conversation on the patio that I'd overheard and written down in a contractor's notebook out of pure old habit. Renee's face went through something I will never forget as long as I live. Confusion first, then disbelief, then a kind of horror that had nowhere to land because the man it belonged to was standing 3 feet away from her in our kitchen. "Derek," she said, voice shaking, "tell me this isn't true." He didn't answer. That was the answer. There it is. There's the truth, finally, in the silence of a man who's run out of scripts. "There's more," Denise said, and I watched Renee's knees nearly go out from under her as Denise explained the lender's calls. 3 of them in the past. 10 days, threatening personal collection against Derek once the lien was voided, because the money he'd drained against my house was already gone. Spent, not on the business he'd bragged about at dinner for 2 years, on losses he'd been hiding since before Cole ever learned to lie about a broken lamp. He taught that boy to lie by living a lie himself, every single day, at my own table. "I have something for you," Denise said, and pulled the final page from the folder and handed it to Derek directly. He read it. I watched every muscle in his face fight not to break. It was an eviction order, not the empty threat he'd waved at me in March, a real one, court-issued, 30 days, naming him specifically, on a property the court had just confirmed, in writing, belonged solely to me. "You can't do this," Derek said, and his voice had lost every ounce of the certainty it carried 5 months earlier in this same room. "I'm not doing anything," I said quietly. "The court did. I just made a call." Renee didn't speak to me for 3 days after that. I understood. I'd spent 6 weeks protecting her from a truth I was terrified would break her, and now it had broken her anyway, just on a different schedule than I controlled. On the 4th day, she knocked on my study door, the same door she used to knock on as a little girl, wanting to show me a drawing or a scraped knee. And she stood there with Cole's hand in hers, eyes swollen from crying that hadn't fully stopped in days. "He's gone," she said. "Moved out yesterday. I filed for separation this morning." She looks like a woman who just set down something she's been carrying so long she forgot it had weight. "I should have seen it," she whispered. "I should have seen what he was becoming, what he was turning Cole into." "You saw what he wanted you to see," I told her. "That's not the same as being blind. That's just being loved by someone who is lying to you every day." She cried then, really cried, the way I hadn't seen her cry since her mother's funeral, and I held my daughter in the doorway of the study where I'd made that first phone call 5 months earlier, and something in that house finally exhaled. I didn't pursue criminal charges against Derek. Denise thought I was foolish for it. Maybe the first was. But I'd spent 2 years watching a 9-year-old boy learn that people who hurt you deserve to be hurt back twice as hard, and I decided I wasn't going to be the last lesson Cole learned about how the world works. Derek left with his name attached to a civil judgment that will follow him for years, and that, for me, was consequence enough. Cole and I sat on the back porch a few weeks later, the September light doing that same gold sideways thing it did the day Renee first asked to move in, 2 years and a lifetime ago. He was quieter than he used to be, older, in the way kids get older too fast, when the ground shifts under them. "Grandpa," he said, "was it my fault, all of it?" "No, son. It was never yours. It was a grown man's fault for teaching a child that lying was easier than the truth, and I should have said something the first time I saw it, instead of the third." "No," I told him, "but I need you to hear something, and I need you to really hear it. Telling the truth costs you something up front. Sometimes it costs you a lot. Lying costs you everything, just later when you're not looking. I'd rather you pay early, every time, for the rest of your life." He nodded slowly, and I watched something settle in him, not fixed, not overnight, but started. On the mantel behind us, repaired now, sat Eleanor's music box. Denise had known a restoration specialist in Phoenix. It plays the same waltz it always did, chip in the corner and all, and some evenings I still lift the lid just to hear it, and I swear some nights I can almost feel her sitting there in the kitchen light, telling me I did all right. If this story stayed with you, that folder on the kitchen table, the silence when Derek couldn't answer his own wife, that music box finally playing again, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, because there is so much more where this came from. Drop a comment and tell me, what moment across these 3 parts hit you hardest? And tell me where in the world you're watching from tonight. I read every single one, and I mean that. Thank you for walking through this one with me.